Welcome to the Primal Foundations podcast. I'm your host, Tony Pascola. Our guest today is Eric Reynolds, more commonly known as KetoFiveO. Eric is a retired police officer from Boynton Beach, South Florida. After being diagnosed with heart disease at the age of 48, Eric implemented a ketogenic and carnivore diet to not only lose over 80 pounds, but reverse his heart disease. Eric currently works as a licensed sports nutritionist, personal trainer, and a film producer. In 2020, Eric started the KetoFiveO company with the goal of helping first responders with proper nutrition and exercise. While running his business, Eric travels all over the United States with his family and homeschools his children. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony.
Thanks for being here. One of the reasons I reached out to you, a couple different reasons. One, I think you're doing a fantastic job of getting this message of, proper nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle out there. But I also have my mom worked for the police department. My stepfather was a sergeant of the police department, and my dad was a firefighter. So I've seen kind of firsthand kind of the lifestyle that they live, both with the stress and nutrition. So thank you for all that you do. And it just kind of like hits a little bit home for me because I had my stepfather had a quadruple bypass, and my father, same thing, a firefighter. He had a quadruple bypass as well. So I think a lot of things, through their life and their work kind of contribute to that. So I'm so excited to have you on and just to talk about your story. But yeah, if you could start us off with like your teenage years in terms of like how health and nutrition was for you in teenage, and then kind of moving our way into like how you got into being a police officer.
Well, it's funny. I look at my 11-year-old son now, and I looked like him back in 1980. I was 11 years old. I was athletic, one of the fastest kids in the school in Miami, which is hard to say. And, and something happened by the time I got to be 20. That whole decade of the 80s, I never really thought about it too much until I started my own health and started looking at stuff. And that was when the high fructose corn syrup got introduced into our cereals, Pop-Tarts, school lunches, everything. So my mom, being a police officer, working a lot, she trusted the system. She's, the food pyramids, and, if something said, hey, this is healthy and it has all the multivitamins you need, and she bought it, because, nobody had been getting chronically as sick then, like we're having now. So it was more believable that they were looking out for you, oatmeal for breakfast. And then, so anyway, we would buy cheap food at the store, whatever coupons would work with, buy one, get one free, whether it was mayonnaise or whatever, So by the time I started looking at my health, I played football, so it was always about bulking up. Our coaches were promoting high carbs, lots of carbs and pastas, and just constantly feeding myself. And I was always about 200 pounds. I played defensive line. I was a little bit undersized, but I was quick and I remembered the plays. So I ended up playing and starting, and I was just like this little anchor in the front causing chaos while everyone else made tackles. And I was just getting beat up all the time, but I loved it. Yeah. But trying to bulk up after I got to college, and I pretty much knew I wasn't playing college football anymore. Now I got to go to school. Those habits still stayed. I'm still eating, late night eating, crushing freaking subs and chips and sodas, like every other college kid. And I got up to like 235 pounds my freshman year in college. Just that freshman 15, it was like freshman 30 for me. And I even got stretch marks. I got big so fast back then.
Yeah.
And I never really battled weight 100. I always had love handles and stuff from playing sports, but it really became, self-conscious in college. You're trying to impress girls and look good at the beach and all that. And all of a sudden I'm like, man, I'm kind of fat. But then I hung out with fatter guys, so I didn't feel that fat, like pretty girls hang out with. Never mind, we won't go there. That was the old days back in the 80s. We did stuff like it. So it was, I couldn't believe it. And then from that point on, I was always watching my weight, trying to outrun it. Go to the gym, play basketball 4 or 5 times a week, playing softball. Maybe it's not beer, I'll drink vodka. And I was always just tweaking, trying to work on something. And the only thing that ever worked, it was in the 90s, was Atkins. Somebody had told me about eating chicken wings and meat all the time, and it sounded crazy. And I did it for a little bit. I lost weight, but I couldn't sustain it because not only were there no literature out there really to back me up, or doctors or anything, it was just kind of like, well, you're going to die of heart disease or something, and it scares you.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, so, you know, with my mom being a cop, go to college, you know, I had started working retail security, catching shoplifters, and finally Boynton Beach, you know, where I was wrapping up all these, you know, catching all these shoplifters all the time. They're like, hey, come join us. You get a Batman belt, you get all these little toys and tricks, and you get a pension. And I was like about 30 years old. I was like, you know what? I do need to start thinking about long-term goals and a retirement, stuff like healthcare, you know, big boy stuff.
Yeah.
So I applied to the department, got hired on at Boynton Beach. And I remember in the academy, I was one of the older guys, you know. But I was in decent shape, you know. I was probably about 225 then, 6 foot. My body fat was probably a lot higher than I realized looking back, but I thought it felt pretty good. You know, I had the big
Yeah.
arm, you know, typical cop build, bald head, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is my wardrobe I'm wearing now. And still the weight thing was always kind of there. Gun belt, you know, and then after the years on the department and working the road and stuff like that, you do expand, you know,
Yeah.
the stress and the cortisol levels, and you know, you're gaining weight sometimes without even eating, just based on stress, you know. And I didn't get it at first, you know, and then as I was getting bigger in the late 2010, 2011,
Mm-hmm.
I trained for we were in a calendar once in like 2008. So I was coming off of doing that stuff. Well, it wasn't quite a vegan diet, but it was definitely cutting a lot of the riffraff out, a lot of the seed oils,
Yeah.
and and I didn't figure it out yet that that's what I was doing. I just thought I was running and trying to watch what I ate.
Mm-hmm.
But I started ballooning up again after I did that calendar. I was like, what the heck? It's gotta be
Right.
the beer. It's gotta be the chips. Not realizing it was everything else that was going on with my diet from, you know, I love I love bread. Bread was in
Mm-hmm.
almost every meal, you know, whether it was rice or whether it was something like that was always in my diet. And then doctors are saying, hey, your cholesterol is high, your blood pressure is high, pushing the pharmaceutical life on you. And my wife
Right.
not being a big fan of pharma from her own path with her family, and she got her dad off of insulin by doing keto and stuff like that. So I mean, she's got her
Mm-hmm.
own, and I wasn't listening to her a lot of the time. I didn't know, I don't even think she really knew what she was trying to do, but indirectly it got me to start looking at my diet a lot more. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want stents when they were, you know, cardiologists telling me about stents. And I've had a
Yep.
friend, Joe Crowder, died in great shape, 44 years old after he had stents put in. I'm
Wow.
not saying it's correlation, but I know 3 years before he didn't have stents and he didn't have any heart issues. They
Mm-hmm.
said he did, you know, and then you start peeling the layers in the medical business and how they direct you down these avenues to kind of make you think you got to go this way and this way. Anyways, I always thought that killed my buddy. So I was never big into stents. Start researching it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I started researching cholesterol, you know, and I came across, I think it was Dr. Ken Berry and then Dr. David Diamond who did the thing about, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all the pharma and like how that Cristor and all that stuff is just BS, and they statistical lies they've used to, you know, from propaganda to promote that stuff. And it was like
Yeah.
organized crime to me, you know. And then I read Nina Teichel's book, you know, Big Fat Surprise. And then, you
Mm-hmm.
know, Magic Pill, I saw that documentary. And then I just started going fat fiction. And then fat, you know, you start, and I'm like, oh my God, the sugar industry, and you know, you can go all the way back if you want to go back in history. I mean, we can go Rockefeller and all that stuff. But I was talking about
Yeah.
right then, indirectly affecting me was them hiding the stuff about how bad sugar was and how addictive it was. And then how they lobbied to get it into so many things, you know, and like you can't sell jam unless it has 40% sugar in it, according to the FDA. You have to call it something else, spread, you know, or
Yeah.
some soup. You know, you
Uh-huh.
start seeing it. I go, it's just a classic mob behavior. They're controlling the industry, and they have a vested interest in sugar being out there. So who's on the board? All the sugar guys. And now it's pharma guys. But back then, you know,
Yeah.
you could see it in the food world.
And it's so crazy that, I mean, because you have you worked as a police officer and you've seen, you know, these epidemics and things like that, but you see right in front of us these businesses operating, like you mentioned it, like a drug cartel, getting people hooked at a young age and being longtime consumers.
Yeah, we arrested doctors. I was in, you know, we would do a vice unit operations where we take down these guys that were just writing scripts all day long, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You
Yeah.
know, and I'd see, you know, when an old person passes away, or anybody really, but usually in one of our communities, we have a lot of elderly.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody passes away, we still have a duty to inspect the body, kind of not like an autopsy, but you know, you kind of roll the guy over, make sure there's not a knife sticking out of the back of him or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I got accustomed, fortunately, a lot of elderly in this community. There's a lot of people just dying, right? And you send out the doctor notice, you know, here's this doctor. Hey, you know, like, oh, he was suffering heart disease. I'll sign the medical, you know, slip. All right. Well, I got to document all the pills. All those bags of pills are in the cabinets because a lot of opioids are in there, a lot of, you know, Schedule II narcotics. So we have to now document that and take it into custody so the family's not stealing it, or the grandkids aren't picking through it, or the staff that works there or lives at the, you know, whatever. And my hand used to cramp up all the time writing that stuff because I couldn't, half the time I didn't know how to pronounce it. I didn't even know what it was, but I always knew all those bags of medication. I'm like, this is why this guy's dead.
Yeah.
You can't have this much stuff going in your system, you know? And
wow.
So that kind of, I was never a big believer in modern med just going into it. And, you know, obviously being in my police shooting where I got shot, and then PTSD started kicking in, my own weight gain, you know, jumped up again, and then the heart disease diagnosis. I was looking for anything I could besides prescription pills. I was like, there's got to be something, you know. And a buddy of mine I was playing basketball with told me about keto. He had lost 50 pounds. I didn't even know what it was. You know, one of the jokes is I thought it was some new martial arts cross training thing, you know, and it just sounded like it was painful. It sounded like
keto,
painful.
Yeah.
Keto flipping tires or something, you know. So I was always like, oh, I don't know about that. And I read up on it, and it kind of made sense a little bit, burning fat for fuel, even though I didn't have a nutrition background or anything. So it was kind of outside of my comfort zone. I've been in a cop world for 20 years, and everything's very simplistic. You write it so a dumb jury can read your report. You know, you're not trying to be all fancy. And so now I'm understanding a lot more of the science behind it. So I'm like, let me try it, you know. And I started fasting. I said, all right, I'm going to start, have my window will be like 11 and 5, you know. And that was pretty easy to get to that point, you know. I'd already started weaning off some carbs already. But once the keto way of meal prepping, you know, broccoli and chicken lasagna or whatever was on zucchini lasagna, like crazy. And I'd freeze it and have it with me on shift. I could go in any local, you know, convenience store, heat it up, or go back to the station and have it, or I could eat it cold. I mean, I ate it cold too, you know, I didn't care. And I started seeing the weight come off about 2 pounds a week. You know, I get on the scale once a week. I was like, all right, this is cool. You know, I was around 248. And I tried my way for keto about a month before. So I got down about 235. And then, so now it's like, you know, I'm a month in, I'm already at 225-ish, you know, and then kept going. And then I'm seeing 215, 214. Now I'm getting into an area I haven't seen as a cop. Because remember, I was in the academy at 225. So now I'm like, wait a minute, I'm no longer a 42-inch waist. Now I'm down to a 38. Feeling good, you know, I can tell, like, you know, my face is getting a lot more narrow, and you know, I'm still working out. I'm not killing it. I ain't trying to put on bulk like I used to, you know, and that's a whole other thing. I'm more into resistance training now and stuff. But this time it was just seeing the slow progress. And then once I got about 200 pounds and I was rocking and rolling, I mean, that's when KetoFiveO showed up, because people at the department started asking me, they're like, Eric, how'd you lose 50 pounds? First, are you sick? You know, that was always something. No, I'm not sick. I ain't got no cancer. Like, you know, unfortunately that hits people, and that's the first thing they think of. But no, man, I just got off the seed oils and the processed foods and really started just looking at what I'm eating. And I go, it's incredible. And then I started coaching some guys. Hey, what about peanut butter? Nah, stay away, you know, or whatever. I'd get them on the almond butter or something just to work them off that addiction of some of the stuff they're eating, right? And then a couple of guys lose 20 pounds. They're like, you got to talk to keto. And then it was 5-0, and then KetoFiveO. And it just grew, and I started just helping other cops, other departments, and then it was nurses, because, you know, cops are married to nurses and teachers. And then, you know, I started networking there and just trying to it's easy. I mean, once you understand it and you really break it down to what you're putting in your body and how simplistic it is, if you do carnivore or just keto, like if you want to do some vegetables on the side, or you know, like my wife does cassava pasta. I think it's Jovial or whatever makes a brand, you know, and that's what the kids will eat. They'll have that, you know, not a bunch of it. They don't have it like macaroni and cheese like we did growing up, but so those kind of things work depending on who the individual is. But I know that going strictly carnivore and just animal based all the time has just been the best thing for me. I know it's hard for people to understand that, because it is really backwards thinking when you look back at how we've been, especially in my 53 years here, what we've been taught about diet's been completely upside down, like they've said. You know?
Yeah, I get asked all the time about like, well, it's almost the same. It's so funny. Like our stories are like super similar. Like I've gone through weight, like wrestled in high school football, and then like college comes and I shoot up like crazy, like freshman 50, man. I was, whew. But we, protein shakes, bulking up, all because this is what we're supposed to do. This is what we're told. But it's just one of those things where it shows a lot of, that things are working and people are coming to you. And it's like, people are coming to you. They want to know what the heck you're doing. I always say, like, people in this space, it's like, we're not foghorns. We're not like, you gotta drop the vegetables now. Like, we're not foghorns. We're lighthouses, right? People just get attracted to us in a way, and they're like, what is this guy doing? What's this? So you started helping out all these people. You're named KetoFiveO. That's your name now. Rocking that. What made you go from keto personally to carnivore? And like, was there any differences in terms of how you felt, or things that either cleared up or didn't?
Two things. It was retiring. My wife had indoctrinated me on this whole tiny house living stuff, and we should get a camper and travel. And I'm like, you're crazy, sell our house. What, you think I've been working 20 years for as a cop? So we have a house, and all this, it was just a different mindset. And so she convinced me. We had some where I could retire at 50 years old and start collecting my pension. And the way things were going with our career, this is pre-COVID, I wasn't going to be making any more money in my city. I was pretty much topped out, unless I was going to go get promoted, go to nights, shake up my whole life just for that extra buck, right? So she said, no, let's just retire at 50. I was like, all right. So once I retired, the stress is gone. And that's when I was reading Saladino's book, in the Carnivore Code. A lot of that really started hitting home with me. And then I got into, some Mercola articles and stuff like that, and Sean Baker. And then obviously it was, Ken Berry. And then I just said, I'm going to try this. And within 2 months, I lost the next 25 pounds. I saw abs for the first time. Wow. Like, because I know we have them, and they already told me that when I was a fat guy, you got abs under there, but I never really saw them. And when I was able to, I think I got down to 176. I'm about 181 now. Wow. But when I was 176, it was like I was starting to get shred material. My body fat then was still 10%. So I could have still shaved a bunch more off, because, I still got loose skin. When you're 250 pounds, I know I got to do the old freaking fasting a lot longer, but my camping life, I can't always spend 36 hours fasting depending on what we're doing. But man, it was just a size 33-inch waist. What? I was never 33 ever. I went from whatever Husky was, 30 size, and next thing you know, I'm a big boy size. That's the way it was. Shopping at Sears or J.C. Penney's, whatever we could find the big size of that, right? It wasn't quite Walmart sizes or anything like that, but it was a bigger size. And they just said, you're husky, No, I was getting fat. This is the beginning of me being metabolically sick, but nobody knew it.
Right.
But yeah, doing the carnivore and then understanding the simplicity of it. Man, I could just eat eggs all day if I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to be malnourished. And then obviously, I looked at what the water I'm drinking, compared, if it's over, if it's super filtered, you're not getting anything in your water. So we do try to add some minerals or stuff like that, because I did go through keto flu, all that stuff, with my potassium and my magnesium not quite being where it was, because I was still working out pretty heavy and trying to combat that with eating differently. And sometimes my body did go through a little bit of I'm cramping up in the middle of the night, so I got to know I got to take care of myself throughout the day a little better, and I battled alcoholism the whole time I was a cop, and drinking and trying to suppress my nervous system, calm it down, and the only thing I had as a cop was either get prescription pills or alcohol. There's no marijuana, there was no CBD stuff we could take, because next you pop hot on a piss test and now you could be fired.
Right.
So that was another thing. I saw cops around me just hitting the bottle, getting, whatever their prescriptions are to calm themselves down. And when I started like changing my diet, losing the weight, inflammation in my body started disappearing. Little did I know how much it was helping my brain the whole time. Some of my I didn't have night terrors, but I would have stuff that would go on from my shooting. And all of a sudden it wasn't as aggressive, you know. It wasn't just always as present in my brain. And then, I started looking at Alzheimer's and dementia and all over Florida, how there's just like a new Alzheimer place is opening on the corner right next to the pharmaceutical place where you get the drugs that cause the Alzheimer's. I mean, I saw the whole freaking thing all the time. And
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to let my brain get trash from this fucking crap. I'm sorry. So I just started thinking more clearly, getting outside more, laying down in the grass and doing stretches and stuff, just to get more connected with nature. And that's what we've been doing on these camping trips. We were down at the lake today, stretching on the dock, just trying, because I was a little overwhelmed with stuff going on with my cops and campers and trying to go nonprofit. So I got stresses here. Even though I'm retired, I still got stress. I got kids. Right. I got to do the bearings and stuff on my rig. So there's all kinds of just stuff you got going on. And then I go out there to the water, I stretch, look at the trees, talk to my wife, we're both stretching. And then we walk back and everything's all right.
Yeah.
You're almost regrounded again, and
that's the thing, especially with being, firefighters, military, police. It's just, you punch the clock, right? But when you go home, sometimes that stuff, it doesn't go away. It stays with you all the way through. And a lot of people will, like you said, go to pharmaceuticals, go to alcohol and things like that, drugs. This form of dieting, has that, with the stress, right? That mental clarity and stress, have you seen the changes and improvements for that?
Yeah, the motivation too. When you have more energy, instead of sitting around thinking about doing stuff, sometimes you just do it. Like I didn't know anything about social media. Last thing I wanted to do was get into social media, and promote anything on, through Instagram or doing, because I saw what it did to cops when they're on the job trying to do social media stuff. Always worked out bad.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I meet a lot of retired first responders, a lot of veterans in this RV camping world. A lot of retire and they travel, and they're almost all metabolically sick. They're almost all on medications. Yeah, whether it's blood pressure, cholesterol, and then their diets are trash. I always joke with them, let me do a KetoFiveO raid on your freaking camper right now. Let's see what you got in there. No, I don't want you in there. I go, well, then you already know, and you got to start looking at it. So, I'll, like you said, we're a lighthouse. I try to guide them and say, this is what you can do. And my wife's really good at talking about the kids' nutrition, because we have 11 and 7-year-old, they eat clean. Not obsessively where they don't have a cheeseburger. They'll just have a cheeseburger, no bread.
Right.
Or we'll use cauliflower or sandwich thins or something. My wife does make her own sourdough bread out of real ingredients. So there's no shelf life, stuff like that. Yeah. And we just ended up getting conversations all the time. People were like, man, I almost feel like a snake oil salesman, back in the day where you're on your wagon, you come into town, you're like, this is what I'm selling, but I'm not selling. I'm just telling you about health.
Just living your life and people come to you. Yeah.
And that's how the whole cops and campers thing got started, because I want to run a retreat program where I can have diet brought in to the healing of these campfires. And, it's an event where we get together for like 2-3 days and we have bonfires, we have food, we have a live band that comes out. We've had National Guard out there with bounce houses for the kids to play at. So it's just like just therapy and at camping. That's all it is. And guys find each other. They find someone else that likes to camp in the same parts. And then they got a camping buddy, and now that's keeping them away from being alone, because then we were all missing being part of the gang, whether it's your football team, your army squad, squad or whatever, your police squad. Once you're gone from that, you're kind of lost, a lot of guys. So having these little events and these get-togethers now, that gives them something to look forward to. And hey, I'll see you in July next year. I'll see you in Georgia in April, and then that's when I'm going to get them. I got to get them to the party. And then I'm going to have like Dr. Kiltz, maybe Dr. Bear or Sean Baker. We're going to roast a pig at one of my cops and campers event. We have to roast a pig. I mean, come on. They always making fun of pigs. All right, let's roast one. So, and I'll have these guys there to talk. And just have a meetup, MEAT up, and hey, let's talk nutrition, guys. And once they start hearing Dr. Kiltz or some of these other doctors say, hey, this is what's going on. This is why Eric's been telling you about watchers you're putting in your body, blah, blah, blah. And then that reinforces it. And I think we'll start to get a lot more guys following the program. You know,
Yeah.
just eat clean meat and, you know, throw in your vegetables out of guilt, like I said earlier, if that's what you want. But for the most part, there's certain vegetables you should concentrate on more than others. And, you know, there's a whole way we can get into that rabbit hole, but nothing better than a steak and some seafood or something. I mean, come on. You can't, bacon and eggs. I mean, come on.
I look at my stepfather in particular, because he was a sergeant and he was, you know, he had these different hours. Sometimes he's overnight, sometimes he's the middle of the day type deal. And I talked to him later in life, you know, I go by my mom and stepdad's place, and he gets up in the morning and he tells me this like straight up. He goes, you know, when I get up in the morning, the first thing I think about, where am I eating today? Like, I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you know, I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to meet this guy over for breakfast. We're going to go over here. By the way, he has a can of Coke for breakfast. So, you know, that's where he's at. Oh, then we're going to go to this Anthony B's. We're going to get some slices, maybe get Chinese food. And later on, we're going to go to Rick Benny's. We're going to get sandwich, breaded steak sandwich. And I'm like, you thinking about this right now? And he goes, yeah. I go, that tells me you're addicted to the food. And that was their lifestyle, being on shift together. It's the brotherhood, it's the camaraderie, but these habits just keep going, you know, on. And they're like, where are we going for breakfast? Where are we going for lunch? Where are we going here? If you had to kind of do it all over again, I know you're saying you were starting to bring your own things. You know, what would you kind of tell people who are in these like firehouse shifts and first, you know, paramedics and police officers? What's some things that they can do to help themselves out?
What I do with a couple of guys I've helped is, depending on their 12-hour shifts, I try to get them to fast during their shift. They're going to be more alert. They're going to be more hungry. I don't mean hungry in the sense of starving, but just focused. You know, there's a certain edge you have, you know, and especially like a hunter would. If you're starving, you're hunting something, you're going to be a lot more engaged than if you just ate a, you know, deer down the road. You're not going to be paying attention. So, but I know the guys like their coffee and stuff like that. So, you know, that's what I would do, the bone broth, or throw in at least something into the coffee, heavy cream and something. You could just sip on that throughout your shift, you know, and kind of keep the, you know, monsters at bay. And, you know, there's always snacking, beef jerky and cheeses and stuff like that. But for the most part, what they do is they'll fast. They usually get a rest. They'll stay hydrated. And then at the end of their shift, they'll go meet up at one of the diners and bacon and eggs, or, you know, maybe all the guys aren't, you know, maybe some guys are getting biscuits and gravy or whatever, but like you said, they're getting together. At least they know what to eat. I'm going to get the pork chops today with the eggs, or I'm going to get, you know, it's not breads, it's not the oatmeal, or I'm going to have, you know, grits. They love the grits, some of these guys, but, you know, it's just getting them to be focused on that. Now you're replenishing your body. You're breaking a fast. Let's fill it with nutritious food. And this way you'll be ready to go later on. You might even hit the gym before your shift. You know, we're allowed to work out on duty, or at least at my department we were. They give me an hour. Oh, wow. Shit, an hour? Awesome. I can fit in a meal and I can get a workout in if I want it. Or I'd work.
If you're working out over an hour, what are you doing?
You're done. I mean, I was going to tell you about the resistance training, because I know I've seen some of your videos, and pull-ups was always the thing that I could never do. I was always too heavy. It hurt my shoulders, and I never really tried, honestly. And nobody really worked with me holding my feet. Let's build up to it, you know. I just gave up, you know. And so pull-ups is something I battle with all the time. And my son he can do like 22. He's 11 years old. He's really strong, but he motivates me, because I see him and he'll just like be pulling himself on. I'm like, all right, try to do 10 today. And I usually get out, because I have a portable one. I usually about 6 to 8, trying to do a real slow, correct form. I don't want to herky jerky it, you know, but I've started doing like the slower resistance training, a lot of the weights, a lot slower, holding it longer, time under tension. And man, the last 2 years I've been doing that. Not only do I feel I'm leaner, but I'm definitely just as strong as I was before. Maybe I'm not pushing up 315 like I was before. Like, I don't need to now.
Right.
I mean, I can do 245 and still get the same workout, you know, and throw in pull-ups now that I wasn't doing before, you know. And I like bringing my legs up and working my core. I never realized how bad my core was. So I lost the weight, started really looking at it. And, you know, everything from leg lifts to doing handstands and headstands, stuff I never did, because I couldn't support the weight. And now I'm trying to walk on my hands with my kids, and just, you know, I fall down, but I know how to roll, and it's fun though. I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm doing this at 53 years old, I play zombie tag with my kids at the park. You know, I'm trying to jump over the slide and do stuff, and I hit my shin now and then, you know, but hey,
Yeah.
can't believe it. You see all the other parents on their phones just sitting there, they can't even move.
Now, do all the other parents, like when they ask you how old you are and you said 53?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do they even believe you?
No, I have to no, and they can't even believe it when I tell them I'm a retired police officer. Like, well, you're retired, you're just a kid. And I go, hey, I wasn't always just a kid. I was a sick old man there for a while. And
Yeah.
this is what diet changes. I mean, I always tease them. I go, you'll grow hair, you know, on carnivore, you know, and which
Dude,
there's
seriously.
no lie, dude. I was a bald-headed guy. Not that I was going bald, but I never thought I could rock this. Man, if I had this in high school, I would have joined a band or how to play the guitar.
I tell people this. So I went through I was a vegan for a little while because to me, I was like, that was the healthy way. This is what you have to do. And at first it worked. I lost weight. I felt great. And then I got over that honeymoon phase. And one of the things that started happening to me, and I started getting bald spots a lot. It's come back. I don't have a luscious head of hair like you, for sure. You got a nice flow, but I literally started growing back hair when I started doing keto, and then carnivore is when I really started to see it come back in. It's gonna go maybe one of these days, but it's definitely better. So there's some truth to that. Like eating, you know, animal-based protein and good fat, like that's what your body wants. It's gonna grow some hair, which is good.
And it's everything else. You
yeah.
start looking at the toxins in your shampoos and you're like, what am I actually putting on my skin? You start looking at it. Like, I got off the lotions and my wife's trying to get me to use lard. You rub some lard on me now. Like, here we go, baby. It's go time. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. That whole industry is like, that's the next wave of this whole thing is like the tallow lip balm, the tallow skin lotion, all those kinds of things.
KetoFiveO soap.
There you go. Now we talking. And you're talking about your kids and running around your kids and things like that. So you and your wife homeschool. Like how is that? And like how is, you know, you guys and your lifestyle affected your kids?
Well, I wasn't ever homeschooled. I was a typical mom worked, dad worked, and went to freaking school, went to aftercare, you know, while mom was still working, whether it was YMCA or football practice or baseball, whatever, you know, I was always busy. So when my wife, it was first grade, my son was the first time he was going the full day, 7:30 till 2:30, you know, the whole thing. And it just wasn't clicking for him, you know, he needs to be active. And then, you know, kind of like you take a dog to the park and run him, and then he can come back and learn, you know, so that's kind of how he was. And she mentioned, I don't think this kind of the way the school's set up is conducive for his learning. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Does it mean I got to get a tutor? You know, I'm thinking money, you know, what's it going to cost me? You know, I just want the kid to go to school like we all did. And she said, let's take him to this homeschool meeting. It's at this park. And we took him in there and we started meeting all these moms and different teachers and different kids. And it was like night and day talking to these kids. They shake your hand, they look you right in the face, and they acknowledge that you're there. And I was kind of impressed with that. And I said, all right, let's try it. And we pulled them out and we never looked back. I mean, it's been so great for them. I'm around to teach, and we're not indoctrinating them on one way. You know, we're very open-minded people. One of the biggest things we're passionate about is obviously nutrition. So we let them understand what this will do to them, what those dyes do in the candies that are out there that they're feeding kids, that somehow that's legal, which I don't know what that is. And then all the cereals, and my kids will read the back of boxes now, you know, so they ain't going to be fooled by the FDA or any of the food systems. They're ahead of that. And when we travel around, everything's a learning experience, and we learn together, whether we're going to a Civil War museum or we're going for a hike with a waterfall. We talk about, my kids are all into nature. He's got a spider in the camper right now in this enclosure. And then every night, I swear that sucker is going to get out. So I'm always like, I'm hearing the scraping and stuff, but it's locked in there. But he'll come home with different stuff. He knows so much about insects. And then he does stop motion. And then my other kids all into his things. And they're allowed to just learn what they want organically. If they're into math and they love to read. Well, that's too awesome. Pretty. And those are two things that we were kind of forced into going to school. They're doing it on their own. Of course, I got my oldest, I got him turned on to The Walking Dead. I got him the comic books. So that's how I got him reading. Because he was like, zombies? Yeah. Hey, you got to do what you got to do, right? And so now he's reading Harry Potter right now. I'm like, hey, that's fine. You know, learn about wizards and you learn how to kill zombies. So it's just been learning with them and seeing how they grow in this type of environment. And then you meet other homeschool kids, and they're all, doesn't matter how old they are, they all have siblings, and they all treat each other with respect. And there's just a different attitude with a homeschool kid that we've encountered. You know, and then we see like we call them PSKs, public school kids, when they come on the weekends, and they're not true professional full-time campers because they're still in the other life. They cause havoc. They cause havoc on stuff, man. They start name calling, they'll pick on people. It's like you see all the problems of society in that one weekend when they start bringing the school kids back out.
Yeah, well, for your kiddos, like they have to communicate, make friends everywhere they go, right? Because if they're going to a different place each time, you gotta, you have to learn how to like share and do things and play and all those important things that we used to do back at, when we had these unstructured times. Now it's just all, you go to school. So I don't know if you notice, I'm a teacher. I'm a PE teacher. That's my main gig. And I see like when kids have unstructured time, which should be the time where they become themselves and work together and collaborate without the guardrails of like being in the classroom, it's tough. It's really hard for kids. And especially after going through COVID and being on the screen and being isolated away from each other. It's one of those things that kids need that more than ever, is to be able to work with one another, be respectful to each other. Like you're saying, like a lot of it becomes name calling and things like that, where it's like, that's just not a good way to be. But being able to communicate as a kid, right? Talk about real world, professional, like all those things, like you need to be able to communicate and collaborate with people for now to the rest of your life. So that's awesome that they're able to do that, interact, and that's amazing.
Yeah, and they didn't have to grow up. Unfortunately, I know there's a whole generation of kids out there that had to mask up during schools and stuff. And they missed out on a lot of body language, a lot of stuff. I mean, I couldn't believe I was walking in banks and people were pulling up their masks to go into a bank. I was like, that's a robbery. That used to be what I saw for 20 years. You walk into a bank pulling a mask up, it's about to go down. So that was crazy. And then, with them, they'll see kids eating Doritos and then they'll be eating their pork rinds. And the kids are like, I like pork rinds too. And they're like, yeah, I have some. They're like, you want Doritos? He's like, nah, we don't eat that. And they're like, why? And it's got stuff in it that causes some issues, behavioral issues. And they'll talk about the dyes, and the kids will start looking at the back. And then they'll go tell their parents sometimes, I want pork rinds like Killian does, or I want to eat a steak, like, and some of these families are trying, they just don't know how to go about it, and that's where we come in. Usually if we get to know some of these other families, we become friends with them, and we pay attention to each other, where you're going. Maybe we'll see, we'll cross paths as we're camping. And we're always talking nutrition and behavioral issues. A lot of these kids that are having issues because they're starving. They're not feeding their brains real nutrition, and look at what most kids are eating. Juice bars. Get that crap out of here. It's freaking horrible, some of this stuff. We see them eating their bowl of cereal. You're going to go high and you're going to crash. And that's when we're going to have the issue. You guys are going to start fighting with your army men or whatever right after your bowl of cereal. It's coming.
Yeah. Okay. What do you say to some parents that are some parents are like, well, I can't take that away from them. They're kids. They should have those things. Or they have this excuse of like, no, they can't, they really like it. It's a treat. Like, anything you say to those parents?
A lot of parents know the right answer. They're stuck themselves. Like you're saying, as an addiction, because they got the food in the house. I go, you're the one bringing the food into the house. Right. Now if the kid's a teenager and he's got money, you're going to let him go down to the store and buy that junk. My kids are going to know by the time they're teenagers. Yeah, go ahead, have that soda, but they're going to know what it's going to do to them metabolically. And what's in that soda, especially, and we try to tell them, well, do you ever wonder your own weight problems? And they'll be like, yeah, when I knocked out soda, I seem to lose some weight. Well, look at your kid. You're talking about your kid being a little bit heavy. Knock out the soda, knock out the juices. All those are liquid calories that do nothing except put on fat. I mean, you're just getting a fat kid out of it. So, I'll see it at the stores, and my kids will see it, and we don't try to judge at all. We feel bad for the kids because they're being taught bad habits. They're going to keep going into their adulthood, and, they're going to be sick. They're going to have health problems, and they just keep eating themselves to death, man. It's sad.
Yeah. Even if they opt for different quote unquote fruit juices, and even if they're naturally, let's say, we're talking like we have fruit juice, quote unquote, which is like whatever percent juice, not even real juice. But then like even the fresh squeeze, or it's fresh squeezed oranges. It's got to be good. Like, do you know how many oranges that is to make that one thing? You know how much sugar is in
Just
that?
eat the orange. That's what you're supposed to. You're supposed to have at least the fiber and all that stuff out of it, you know?
Yeah.
I know we've gotten real good on when we eat the fruit too. My wife was big on that. Not like they do a lot of blueberries or strawberries or something, of course, frozen, super expensive, nothing's ever cheap. And she'll let them have that and won't let them eat for a while. You know, she's not gonna let them eat a steak on top of it, or at the end of a steak dinner, throw on freaking fruit. Fruit gets its own time frame to eat, you know, the watermelon, because your body's gonna burn right on through it. And then once it's time to eat, an hour or so later, boom, I think their digestive tract is a lot better. And I saw it with myself, the way I was eating in the beginning, you know, when I was from carnivore, and once in a while I have a piece of fruit and like, okay, I can handle some of this now. Like I realize I can handle like potatoes a lot better than certain other starchy foods for some reason. Potatoes, my body, maybe it's the Irish in me. It goes back to my DNA, you know. But it's something about, you know, I can have, if I go out to eat with some boys, I'm going to have a cheat meal. I'll do the steak and I'll get some steak fries, you know, I won't eat them all and I won't eat theirs, you know, I won't start dipping around the whole table, but I can have a few like that. And, you know, I won't touch it again for a little bit. That's what's great about it. You know, being able to like now say, all right, I'll have a little piece of cake because it's my mom's, whatever, you know, not that we're trying to get her away from that whole cake thing anyways, but you know what I'm saying? You can have a little sample and it's not going to get me back.
Yeah, it's just being able to the thing about like diets, right? It's more, I think it's more lifestyle than anything than a quote unquote diet, but being able to have a little bit of wiggle room, you know, if you have a piece of cake or, you know, you go to Italy and somebody's grandma makes you pasta, homemade pasta, what are you going to not eat it? Not going to have a little bit, but those things are few and far between. And like you said, it's like, I can have it now. And then either one, like, it makes you not feel good, which you're like, I don't want to have this for a long time, or you have it and you feel like, oh, I can control and I can stop. And that's the hardest thing is like, once you go down that path, it's like, I'm going to have a little fruit. I'm going to have a little pasta. I'm going to have this, I'm going to have this cake. And then it snowballs back into like our old habits, but like having that hard stop of like, this is what it is. I know what's in it. I'm going to make a conscious decision here. That's wonderful. That's awesome.
Yeah, when I tell people, like we call them carnivore poops, right? That's a real quick one. You sit down, boom, you're done. Just like in the wild, right? You ain't got time to be looking around, wiping, you know, because you're gonna get eaten, right? So my kids will say that. They're like, carnivore poop. That means it was, and we don't waste it.
Solid.
It's great, man. And then we know if we have a little bit of stuff that's not part of the usual routine, we can see it the next day.
How many people ask you about your bowel movements? Are they curious?
They'll say something about, oh, I heard on the keto flu, you can get the runs or something like that. And I would only say, well, what was happening was you were getting off a lot of toxic foods here. You know, your stomach bio is all changing. It's getting new soldiers in there to fight the new diet, you know, so you're going to have can't trust the fart type of thing. And once you get through that, man, it was like, I mean, the amount of toilet paper I've saved, you know,
that is a crazy thing. So I have like a lot of people they talk to me or ask me like, well, aren't you like constipated all the time? I'm like, no. They're like, well, how often do you go? I'm like, honestly, not that much, like every like couple days, whatever. And they're like, no, so you're constipated. I'm like, no, like all the things I'm eating, my body's taking in. If I eat how I used to eat, I'm going to the bathroom all the time and I'm getting rid of all that stuff. And like you mentioned, like, you know, when you eat bad, you'll feel it and the toilet will get it. But that's like just your body. Like, I'm going to start calling them carnivore poops now because they're just like, boom, real easy, solid. There you go. And then you look at, again, we look back at our history of, you got to have the protein shake. You got to have the bulk up and all stuff. And I know guys that are going to the gym, right? And they're going to the bathroom 3 times in a session. I'm like, dude, are you serious? Like, I haven't gone in 2 days. And fine, you're going 3 times and we've only been here an hour. So that's so funny.
Well, you can see like in the the colonoscopy bags or something. I'm sorry. That
the colonoscopy.
The colonoscopy bags. Yeah. When you see what they're being fed versus someone that has an animal-based diet, almost nothing left. It's all been used up. The body absorbed pretty much most of it. And it's not, vegetation sitting in there or all this other crap that they, feeding these poor people, making it harder on that digestive system, So,
Yeah, because we need fiber. We need so much.
fiber.
That's even the worst.
That's
the
the
worst
best.
thing.
I go, I haven't had fiber, and they're like, what?
It's speaking about your meals, your food. What's the typical, either for you or your family? What's like the typical meal that you go to, or like what's like on the average?
We're on a rotation. We do a lot of burgers because ground beef is one of the, you can do so many things with it. I can spice it up with different, I can put bacon in it with cheese or feta or whatever they're into.
Yeah.
We usually do some form of a chuck roast. So we'll do a roast overnight. So when we get up in the morning, the roast has been sitting there about 8 hours, slow cooking, and it's just ready to go for the day. And then she may do a little bit of basmati rice now and then because she'll do her own sushi. But we'll cook the fish. We're not going to start experimenting with raw fish, especially we never know where we're getting our fish from. So I'm always cooking it. I don't usually dabble into the sushi. It's pretty much eggs, steak, bacon, roast, and burgers pretty much is all I'm ever eating. I do a lot of cheeses. I'll take a hunk of cheese if I'm, I find myself, I'm not snacking like I used to. I used to do pork rinds middle of the day with sour cream or maybe some homemade guacamole or something like that.
Yeah.
But now I don't even do that. I've find that my body seems to only like eating twice a day, about noon and about 5 or 6, depending on if I'm cooking. And that's it, man. It's real easy. Wherever we're going somewhere, it's like just grab me 2 burgers, throw it in a bag, and ready to go. You're like, that's it. I go, yeah, that's it. No, I mean, I started off with organs too. I thought I was gonna have to do the organ thing. Lots of liver, lots of kidneys. I started doing all that stuff, and I didn't like the kidneys. The liver's liver, which means I can have about 4 or 5 pieces. I like to mix it in with my ground, maybe 1 part to 4 parts of the ground beef, mix it in, and then it's a little bit more tolerable and you spread it out. You're not just eating it once a week.
There's a few people that do that now. It's like that's when you buy the ground beef, it's got it already mixed in. And you can just tell that's starting to get more popular.
It's a good way to go with it, but I'm not 100% sold that it's 100% better for you if you just have the ground beef. Based on what I've been seeing, I'm 4 years in now, carnivore. It was 2020 or 3 years in. So what I've seen, I don't, my blood work, my A1C is still, what was it, 5.1 or 5.2 the other day when I had last tested it. Everything else has just been fine, man. It's insane how healthy I feel just eating like that simply.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, your father was talking, he had all these meals lined up, these
for the
different
day.
We're gonna go here, we're gonna go here. I'm like, holy cow. Now I love not even having to worry about it, thinking about the food.
Yeah.
Because now you're free. You're open-minded to other ideas, other things you may want to work on. Like, I'm gonna touch my toes today, something like that, rather than feed my freaking belly, Yeah,
it's the food freedom. The food freedom. I can eat if I want. If I don't, if I need to fast that day or there's no good healthy options, I could wait. I just wait. And then speaking about the food and like how it affects. So I was just, doing some research on you and listening to some different podcasts. You mentioned how one of your kiddos was super sensitive to gluten, and then not only your kiddo, but your wife as well.
Yeah, when my wife was breastfeeding, she did natural childbirth. She was big, like her grandmother had like 10 kids and in a village in Turkey and stuff. So there's no like cesarean scheduled at noon on Friday and none of this stuff. So you can name your baby the right, or have the right birthday for your baby like everyone has.
Yeah.
So our oldest was having a problem with real mucusy stools, in his diapers. We kept going back to what's going on. He's battling something, and my wife's like, I don't know. I'm feeding, breastfeeding. I'm trying to eat what I can, and we were doing a lot of oat bran then. And turns out the doctor's like, well, you know what? He might have a gluten sensitivity, so just lay off of gluten for a little bit and see how he does. About 2 weeks later, when we went back for the follow-up, the doctor was like, hey, so how's Killian doing? And she's like, he's doing pretty good, but I feel fantastic. Turns out my wife had the sensitivity to gluten and had it her whole life because in their culture, in Turkey, they have lots of rices and breads and pastas, and it was everything that was all handmade, the real good, rich stuff, but it was causing her a lot of stomach issues because it's not natural to be processing and eat all that garbage. So once she got off of gluten, we started paying attention now to more breads and the oats, and we realized we were overfeeding him. Oatmeal with raisins, you know, all this stuff you're supposed to do with a 6-month, you know, we give him ready for people food, you know. And that was the beginning of at least her journey and her diet, of what was affecting him. And then we realized, you know, we go to birthday parties, we bring our own cake, our own cupcake, almond flour. Simple Mills makes a brand of it that's very simple. Not Simple Mills, but it's the ingredients are, it's really decent for what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be just a sweet treat, right? Well, at least it's not filled with all the toxins like the regular garbage is. And then you do have a little something for them at the party, so they're not left out, kind of, you know, we're all got to fit in, right? So people used to say, you bring your own cupcake to a party? I go, not like that, we bring our own sandwich. Because when you guys are doing pizza, my kid's going to eat a sourdough roast beef and cheese sandwich with real mayonnaise and, you know, on it. And then he'll have his little cupcake. And and then we talk to people. You know, we don't have, you know, it's a freaking drug. All that sugar, and I'm not gonna stand by there and watch my kid get hooked on this stuff, because you see it, you know, and I was hooked on it. I mean, chocolate cake or ice cream, get out of here. I used to tear that stuff up, man, but because I was always hungry, I was trying to feed my brain.
Yeah,
you know?
that's crazy. In terms of KetoFiveO, the, you know, all the camps that you do with the police, what's the future? Like, what's the next steps? What are you planning? What's going on in the head here?
There's a couple things going on. It obviously is bringing I call it my two-headed monster. I got the KetoFiveO world, nutrition and healthy lifestyle. And then I got the Cops and Campers, which is more of a retreat program for therapy of the mind and the body and the soul kind of thing. So I'm trying to get them together. Yeah. Because if I can bring the nutrition and the healthy minded living to these poor guys that are been, you know, they've done 20 to 30 years, whether it's the fire department or it could be a nurse, you know, or some of these schools. I mean, trust me, these teachers have PTSD too. So just to get them out there and to understand that they can help themselves. They don't have to be depressed. They don't have to be overweight. They don't have to be hooked on or have any medication. They can actually go into their doctor and have me or somebody else as a health advocate speaking for them and saying, hey, doc, how come you're trying to prescribe this stuff when you know it causes this? You know, it could be a statin and how it harms the kidney. You know, because I had a battle with my cardiologist and he was telling me about statins. You know, they've slowed the heart attack death rate since 1990. You can see the bell curve on it. I go, yeah, but you see the bell curve on diet, on kidney disease and what that's doing to our kidneys? And he's like, that's a different conversation. I go, we're talking statins. It's not a different conversation. Yeah. So I was done with him at that point. I couldn't take him seriously. Yeah. You know, he asked me about they're part of, I mean, unfortunately, they're very smart people. They work really hard to get where they're going. And most of them have followed a certain line of thinking and what the narrative is. And luckily, there's so many of them have come out and said, you know what, that way wasn't working. I was getting my patients sick. I was getting sick with them. I mean, how many doctors have we heard say that? And all of a sudden they figured it out.
We're treating symptoms and nobody cares about, like, okay, what the heck is causing these things? Like, nobody talks about pre-care, preventative. It's just like, oh, like, here's a pill. I was going to mention, like, so I went in just to get my blood work done, whatever. I try to go once a year. And I had a new doctor. My other doctor had moved, and just somebody new, didn't even really know me, just checking off the list. And she sees my cholesterol, and this is like the phone call after, like, I did all my blood work. This is the phone call after. She goes, hey, your cholesterol's high. You know, I think I'm going to put you on statins. And I'm like, I'm 34. I'm like, I literally had just run an Ironman a month before. I'm like, I'm in the best shape of my life. I feel great. She goes, yeah, you know, I think we got to put you on statins. Cholesterol's just a little high. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm okay. She goes, really? I go, yeah. She goes, okay. And then that was the end of the conversation. And she just was like going through, I can just tell she was going through the list. Didn't ask me what I was eating. Didn't ask me about my lifestyle. Didn't ask me how I felt. It was just, here's the number. I'm going to prescribe this to this person. And I'm like, and it's like, yeah, I've never gone back to the doctor, but no, that's just how it is. And it's, we worry about the symptoms and we don't really care about anything before that. So
yeah, and most people don't understand their health out there. They just given so much permission to their doctors, and
Yeah.
they don't understand that. And a lot of these doctors that are here now aren't the old time doctors that would try to figure out what's going on and look at the human body as a whole. Those doctors are being phased out.
Yeah.
So the only thing coming is this is what we do, this is how we treat it. And it's obviously it's profitable, but one of the things I would like to do is have the Cops and Campers retreat program where I can actually maybe bring 5 or 6 cops in to a camping area. We meal prep, we grocery shop.
Nice.
We start to teach them some habits and things to do that they can then be in control of it when they get out there on their own. Because when they're driving down the road and they smell Chick-fil-A and they think that's a healthier option, what's going to be the voice in their head? Is it going to be Chick-fil-A, all those chemicals for years being put into your brain to make you just crave it? Or is it going to be, man, that's not even real food. I'm going to go get my own chicken, make my own sauce or do whatever, and a lot of guys, it's hard. I smell it now. I can taste every fast food. If you describe to me what like a Taco Bell burrito taste, whatever it is, I could probably taste it in my mouth, which is crazy. Like Chick-fil-A, a Whopper with cheese. I get all that stuff. How much of that stuff did I eat in my freaking 50 years?
Right. It's a part of the American lifestyle, oh, let's stop here, let's stop there. It's just, we need to get back to the basics. And I think you could agree, it's just like carnivore to me. Again, I'll go veer off of carnivore a little bit. I'll have a little fruit every now and again or something else. But it's like, really, it's just simple, man. I make eggs, I make steak, I make bacon, and I eat till I'm full and satisfied until satiety. And some people don't realize, like, if you need to be satisfied with your food all day, like what are we doing? Like, I'm good. I've eaten my fill. I don't need any more. When I eat like that, that's just my body telling me that. But when you eat, like, if I eat pasta or carbs or whatever, I'm hungry in like another 2 hours.
Chinese food always was like that, right? No wonder there's no real substance in there, It's like you said, man, once you're able to eat like the other day, I made a steak and a dozen shrimp, and I didn't know if I was going to eat it all. Sometimes I would only eat half, but I ended up housing the whole thing. I ate the whole thing, and I was like, well, that's just the way it goes today,
Right.
And then I'm good for another 18, 24 hours, man.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's all you need. Well, Eric, I love everything you're doing. You're helping a ton of people. It just, the work you're doing is fantastic. And I just appreciate everything that you've been putting out, either on Instagram or reaching out to different campsites and people and getting these retreats. How can people find you, get connected with you? What's the easiest way?
Just go to anything KetoFiveO, and that's kind of linked to my Cops and Campers groups too. So you can go KetoFiveO.com or copsandcampers.com. And everything on social media is with those two. So you just put it in there. Whether it's Twitter or Facebook, you want to join our group, it's on Facebook too, where you can put up stuff about meal prep and articles, similar stuff you'd see on some of these other people's websites. But, I got my niche of cops, and, they like sometimes what I put out there. And, it's just about helping them all to get better, man. And quit being fooled,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Ain't no fools here.
And soon to come out, everybody, KetoFiveO lip balm and tallow lotion is coming.
Yeah, maybe there is, if people do want more information, if they want anything about the Cops and Campers group, we did do a documentary. It's on YouTube. It's called Cops and Campers. It's about 30 minutes. It really goes into how it started, because there was a whole incident with a flag and people not respecting the thin blue line flag. That was the history of it, but ended up turning into a very positive thing. And we've done some good things with it. And now we're looking at going nonprofit. And that's going to open up a lot of doors to do these events and to do some of this retreat program where now I can fund caterers. I can fund some of these doctors to come and talk, and maybe we can do blood work while people are there. Let's measure your glucose and stuff while you're there. Let's get you started. Why wait? Get you started. You can still enjoy your beers, but just know what that beer is doing to you as you're watching your glucose meter go up. You're like, wow, I didn't realize it. So that's the goal. And, being able to talk to guys like you that are, in the same industry and trying to really promote health. Yeah. This is great. I love what you're doing. I know you're just starting off. That's awesome. You're just going to keep growing. It's going to keep growing because people want to talk about it. There's so many people out there that want to talk about their own journey. We all have it, and it's I love hearing there's so much content out there of people that have had success doing this. I can't get to it all. You
Right.
know,
Yes.
you can't hear everybody because it's just amazing, you know, from people healing strokes with changing their diets. And it's just amazing how food is really, you know, the key to everything. I mean, we're putting it in our bodies. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's one of those things where everybody has their story and it's just like so crazy. Like it's very, in the carnivore space, like it's like super similar. You're going to go, you want to make a change in your life. And we found keto, or we found a podcast or something, and then we try keto, and then we move our way to carnivore. And it's like, I'm not going back. I'm not changing. This is great. I'm not going to change my diet, lifestyle. No way, no how.
No, and you're young. You got a lot of time, man. You're going to be a huge force in this industry. Watch, 20 years from now, you're going to be writing books. You're going to be at Keto Con, or you're gonna be at Carnivore Con in Austin, Texas, or something.
Yeah. Oh, I think they changed it. It's called like Biohacking Con or something
yeah,
like that. Yeah, something like that. I'm actually, I want to go. I told, I mentioned to Casey Ruff and another person, James, the carnivorist. I don't know if you ever seen his stuff, but I was doing a strength training certification for like barbells. And it was the same weekend. I was like, dude, I need to go out to Keto Con. I gotta just rub elbows with those people and just make connections and talk to people, because like you said,
there's one in January in Boca. It's the Society of Metabolic Health and Practitioners. It's part of Doug Reynolds and Low Carb USA. That group.
Low Carb USA. I'm writing it down right now.
Yeah, it's going to be in Boca Raton, and I'll be working the door there. Make sure we don't. They used to, I guess in San Diego, they had some vegan crash one of their speeches.
No way.
Yelling, arguing. So now he's always like, make sure you check the badge. Make sure I got you. I'll freaking pound some vegan trying to talk smack.
We're all we're listening to the thing, and all of a sudden we just see Reynolds just.
No, just be hear him muffled on, dragged out, never seen again. But
That's
no,
great.
It's a real good event. That's where I first met Dr. Barry. I met a whole bunch. Nina Teicholz was there speaking. So they bring some good people, and it's I think a 3 or 4 day event. And then they have keto dinners at night with keto wine. It's a pretty good little thing. And I know there'll be tons of people there that would love to talk to you, or at least you'd be able to network and then have probably a list of content coming out.
Yeah. Awesome.
Based on what you wanted. But that's a good event. And then obviously they had one last weekend in San Diego. I couldn't get out there. It's just too expensive.
Yeah, it's a metabolic something, or
it's the same group. It used to be called Low Carb USA. He's actually in Fat Fiction. Doug Reynolds. He was the guy running that was a long distance runner for a long time, and typical story, you know, started gaining weight. What's going on? Now your blood not right. And you're like, well, I've been doing everything you said to do, you know, typical.
Exactly.
But that was my first podcast to do in the nutrition space, was his. And it was episode 50, which I always loved because it's 5-0.
5-0, baby.
And that's when I went to he got me hooked up with I'm not selling you on anything. It's what just happened. Jeff Cotterman runs a National Association of Sports Nutrition, not sports medicine. Sports.
Yes, I know exactly what it is.
They got me on board to do that over COVID. I was online learning about nutrition, getting my license and physical training stuff. And it was really, man, I dove in that world because I was like, I'm going to understand this, because I didn't know it before. You know, and I'm still learning. There's so much to learn in it. You know, how to read blood work. What are you looking for with certain, you know, amino acids? And, you know, it's just, it's always evolving. But I know one thing, the carnivore way, I mean, you can't go back. I mean,
no,
the reason it's popular and it works. I mean, it's solid.
Yes. I love it.
So, all right, brother.
Well, thank you, Eric. Appreciate your time. And thank you for everybody listening to the Primal Foundation podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.